fans. This is December 19th, 2019. That is Matt Biscardi over there with a very charming shirt. I'm Damion Rollis.
It is cold in my house, but I'm warmed by your enthusiasm.
It's my caffeinated fake enthusiasm for the Thursday.
Oh, there's no fakeness to you.
No. It's all real.
You're pure authentic.
How's it going, Matt?
It is great. I'm feeling good. It's right before holiday week. Oh, next week.
Oh, yeah, right.
Next week we are only here on Monday, and I'm going to recut some Matt Makes, I think, for the rest of the year.
How dare us?
I know.
Hey.
Well, I don't have a choice. My kids are here.
It's Biz Nugget Thursday.
I love it. Big bag of Biz Nuggets. The agenda is pretty short today.
This is our biggest bag of Biz Nuggets ever.
I'll do the agenda. It is Biz Nuggets and Matt Makes. That's it. That's it. That's what we got today. So sit yourself down, sit tight, because there's going to be so many nuggets in your biz bag that you are...
Yeah, I got to get ready for this. Yeah.
That's very Anchorman of you. Let's, shall I harp us in and we'll just go?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. I thought maybe we had some... I was hoping for some Biz Nuggets music, but no?
Oh, I do have
something.
Biz Nuggets music, but I was so busy that I forgot to actually put it. Our art design team created. It's like a jazz, like nice underscore of jazz beat. It's great. It's really good.
With hi-hats and soft shoes.
Yeah, a lot of
paintbrushes. Oh well, why don't you add it in post, and that way you can keep your job.
Done.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
Pretend it's there.
Yeah, I'm pretending. Ready?
Okay.
Apple, Google, and Amazon are cooperating to make your home gadgets talk to each other. The new partnership is called Project Connected Home over IP, and it will work to create a new standard that will make it easier for the fragmented ecosystem of smart home products to work together. A big win for Apple because Siri sucks.
Well, come on. This is basically just a big win for everyone stealing your data, isn't it?
It is, but they didn't have to. I don't feel like Alexa and Google Home person, whatever that person named, I don't think they had to. They didn't have to. They didn't have to share their brilliance.
I guess.
All right, fine. You have nothing to say on that? You're pro Siri.
Honestly, I like all of these things are creepy to me. It's Hal. They're all Hal. They're all sitting in your house. They're listening for everything you do, and then they're taking pictures of you in your underwear that you haven't washed in 3 weeks. That's what this is to me. None of it is happy.
Speaking of underwear.
Okay. Whoa, nice segue.
YouTube unveils a stricter harassment policy, saying it would now prohibit veiled or implied threats, not just explicit ones, and that it will no longer permit maliciously insulting someone based on characteristics like race, gender expression, or sexual orientation. Now all the company has to figure out is how to enforce it. Wait. Is that the sound of Zuck laughing? Or is that the sound of new Google CEO Sundar Pichai banging his head against the wall?
I'm telling you, Sundar, you and I should sit down. Never, because you'll never ever sit down with me. But and discuss the fact that YouTube is a massive liability for Google. YouTube is just the Facebook of Google, and Facebook is a liability for society. So congratulations, YouTube.
And forget about these policies, guys. You can come up with any policy you want. We know you're not going to enforce them anymore.
You can't. How many contractors can you hire?
Speaking of Zuck, Facebook fails to convince lawmakers it needs to track your location at all times. Yes, that's right. Facebook was forced to say why it tracks users' locations even when their tracking services are turned off. Is there really an answer for this?
Okay.
It's like, it's like Burger King. It's like asking Burger King why it force feeds cheeseburgers to customers after they decide to eat a banana instead.
That analogy seems a little
Rough,
I would,
force, hurried.
you just force fed me a Burger King
Yeah,
analogy.
I did.
I do think we need to dispense with the notion that when any of these companies give you an option to like turn something off, that it's ever
Shit.
off. It's not off. They're watching everything all the time.
Matt's calling bullshit on Zuck.
It's like it's just a constant. It's every time I hear a Facebook story, you should just throw a red flag. It's just not real.
Speaking of data and bananas, hospital execs say they are getting flooded with requests for your health data as tech companies are pitching them relationships and deals that involve gaining access to that data. A sneak peek to 2020, Zuck will know how often you pee, Matt.
He already does. The
Oh, okay.
accelerometer in the phone in my pocket that he didn't turn off is tracking the location to my bathroom.
Speaking of waste, dumpster divers say it's easy to list discarded toys, electronics, and books on Amazon. So, yeah, I guess Amazon sells trash now. Brilliant. That's brilliant, Uncle Jeff. I can finally get a dirty banana peel delivered to me in 23 seconds.
Can
That's
I just
great.
say there was an
Yeah.
awesome website called Swaptree like 100 years ago that you'd actually list stuff that you no longer wanted and you'd just trade it with people like and the algorithm of the program would actually just match you like you wouldn't send one CD and someone else would send you 20. It was like this is in the era of CDs, by the way.
Mhm.
I got like 100 graphic novels doing this, and then they shut it down and just turned it into Amazon competitor that went out of business. So now that Amazon's selling my trash, maybe I can go back to selling it again.
Speaking of outdated references, that was very clever, Matt. Burger King's latest marketing stunt is called Delay Your Way, which is offering travelers with delayed flights a coupon for a free Impossible Whopper. But is this really a win for meatless meat? It sounds more like a Backstreet Boys single in a Tower Records bargain bin. Sounds more like that than does a premium product fighting the empire of meat, doesn't it?
It sounds like everyone just needs to go out and buy some broccoli. Like
Okay.
we're taking flyers for Impossible Whoppers now. Like, get a different thing. Don't go to Burger King. Try that.
Speaking of outdated references, IBM has come up with a new battery technology that
Your
uses
segues.
materials
Your
that
segue.
uses materials extracted from seawater and requires no cobalt. Way to go, IBM. I didn't realize you were still a thing.
IBM is still like a
Yeah,
back end thing.
I had no
Um,
idea.
but can we just say the sad part about this story is that we are still, and it isn't like the child labor is sad and terrible and horrible. Okay, just take that as rote.
Yeah.
We still, as a society, desperately need to dig shit out of the ground to make the things we use. It's 2019. Can we stop digging shit out of the ground? Can we? Is there another way?
Yeah.
So thank you, IBM,
IBM
for using
IBM's
something
jumping into the ocean.
that yeah, like at least we've got a lot of ocean.
Yeah, we do. Speaking of not being a thing anymore, Amazon bans third-party merchants from shipping with FedEx. FedEx says continued investments in a 7-day delivery should help it lap Amazon in 2021. In a poll I just took with my cat, nobody believes FedEx will lap Amazon in anything in 2021.
Although they probably will lap them in requesting taxpayer tax
Oh,
cuts in 2020. So
speaking of wars,
were we
nearly
speaking of wars? I thought we were
Well,
not done.
well, we're talking about war between FedEx and Amazon and the tax cut wars. Just bear with me. This is my theme of the day. Nearly 7% of Disney Plus users with Netflix plan to cancel Netflix, which is ironic because nearly 93% of people don't care anymore.
I don't
Do you care about the
know.
streaming wars
I
anymore?
really do. Although, I'll tell
I
you what's
cared
going to
for a
upend
week.
the streaming wars. There's one
Cared for a week.
thing, and it's not
Yeah.
Star Wars. It is
What?
Frozen 2. Because you won't be
What?
able to get that shit anywhere else, and it's like crack cocaine to my kids.
Okay. All right. So Matt still cares. I
Uh,
cared for a week. I'm over it.
no,
Speaking of not caring,
I'm done paying 14 different services for stuff. I
speaking
just
of
want
not caring,
cable. Just give me cable again.
Peloton Nike, Walmart, and other brands get savage online but are fine in real life. Consumers are increasingly venting their outrage online, but they are rarely acting on it. So I guess it's fun to complain, but that's about it.
I don't know. It was great for uh, aviation gin. Did anybody buy
Uh,
that?
is that what Facebook has become? It's like a suggestion box
That's
full of hate
Twitter.
crimes.
It's Twitter. Twitter's all that.
Okay.
It's a rage machine.
Uh, well, speaking of rage machines and the need for feedback,
Ooh, better segue.
Boeing without 737s is like Coke without soda. CEO Dennis still has a job. Also, Moody's downgraded Boeing's credit rating. CEO Dennis still has a job.
Let's come back to this because I think I know why CEO Dennis still has a job.
Speaking of people who say sorry but don't really mean it, worried Whirlpool washing machine owners struggled for 24 hours to access a recall website to check whether the machine is a fire risk. You couldn't just look at the machine and just wait for the fire. Here's what Whirlpool said. We are truly sorry for the technical issues customers have been experiencing on our website. One of our third-party service providers suffered an issue which affected our recall website. Translation, truly sorry equals go F yourself.
Oh, no.
And third party means it's not our fault, so go buy an expensive exercise bike and leave me alone.
That's it's always not our fault. I'm sorry, it's someone else's fault.
In other truly sorry news, Hallmark says it's truly sorry after it pulled ads featuring weddings of same-sex couples. Ooh, scandalous.
Yeah, Kara Swisher was all over this.
That Hallmark, it's
Does anybody watch Hallmark? Like what?
To be honest, back at the mothership at MSCI, we used to put on the Hallmark channel in the break room just to make fun of it because no, because really it reads like a neo-Nazi propaganda campaign. It's creepy.
Really?
It does. It's like a imagined utopic white world where everything is, free of same-sex weddings. I'm serious. I shit you not. Speaking of sorry, every McDonald's in Peru has been closed for 2 days of mourning after 2 young employees were electrocuted at a branch in Lima.
Were they using Whirlpool dryers or?
Speaking of workers, the National Labor Relations Board ruled that employers can ban employees from using work email for personal purposes, including union organizing. But is a labor union really personal? It sounds work related to me. I don't really get that one.
Yeah, that's going to be a thing that just like whoever's in office is going to keep flip-flopping on that because labors very clearly are not a personal thing. Although, does it really matter in an era where everyone has social media and you could just all connect? I could make like my own free Slack channel with all my friends. It's called Screw My Company.
Hey, I'm part of that company. Screw you. Speaking of labor, a Google engineer says she was fired for creating an internal tool, a browser pop-up window, to notify workers of their rights. So I don't know, make a T-shirt maybe next time. I don't know.
Just don't send it via email.
Speaking of labor unions, this is how different Korea is. Samsung chairman Lee Sang-hoon yesterday was sentenced to 18 months in prison following a South Korean court ruling that he violated labor laws with union busting activities.
Wow.
In all, about 25 current and former Samsung executives were found guilty. It's a big deal.
That is a big deal. Korea is not known for their unionization happenings, and the tech industry is actually a source of unionizing activity in Korea. So is it possible Korea and the chaebols are more progressive with their labor than?
I mean, it sounds more than possible at this moment.
Wow.
Speaking of California, were we talking about California?
Wow, the segues are just magical.
California now allows driverless truck and cargo van testing on public roads. I'm telling you right now, I'm voting for a driverless van over a van driven by an idiot.
Just don't take meth and step in front of them. That's what Uber taught us.
But I'm thinking maybe this should be the new mantra for Boeing board members. I'm voting for a driverless 737 over a company run by a Dennis.
I'm voting for driverless board members. Do we really need them?
Sounds like it's already happening. Speaking of dystopia, here's the headline. I created my own deep fake. It took 2 weeks and cost $552. In other words, the year 2020 is going to be a hell of a lot of fun.
Wow. I would like to put a shout out to anybody. Create a deep fake biz nugget segment for us.
Ooh, I like it. Speaking of innovation, Facebook director Peter Thiel says Google is too big to innovate as he slams Silicon Valley for over-promising and under-delivering on change.
All right.
I'm too tired for a joke here. Is he right, Matt?
Just a little context, Peter.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are one of the original board members of Facebook who
Yeah.
has acquired almost 80 companies since it was founded and has effectively created nothing except stealing the idea for social media from someone else. So to say Google can't innovate and investing in Facebook is sort of like saying what? Give me an analogy. You're the analogy king this morning. It's like
hey, but I'm also
it's
exhausted.
as if Burger King were trying to sell you bananas.
Oh, well, they are, right? Isn't that what a meatless meat burger is? It's just like a
just give
a
me an
patty-shaped
Impossible Whopper
banana.
flyer. Just give me an Impossible Whopper flyer and call it even. But
Speaking of
it's ridiculous.
speaking of change, Kansas City has become the first major U.S. city to offer no-cost public transportation. Is this the only way to get rid of Uber, Matt?
Oh, I think it's a great idea. And I think the headline in 2020 is Kansas City has no public transportation as it's bankrupt.
Speaking of creepy Travis and Uber, Uber will pay $4.4 million to resolve a Travis-era sex discrimination charge. Uber will also create a system to identify managers who fail to respond to sexual harassment reports in a timely manner. Yikes, this wasn't already automatic? So you can build a neat app, but you can't identify managers who fail to respond to sexual harassment reports in a timely manner? I mean, really, think about that.
Well, this isn't a problem for Travis because he
Yeah.
may have been the problem, but he's got $2 billion somewhere else while
He
Uber's
has
still
big
paying.
big bags of Adam Newman-esque cash. Speaking of creepy billionaires, a Manhattan federal court judge ordered the early release from prison of former WorldCom CEO Bernie Ebbers as a result of his dire medical condition. So Bernie served 13 years of his 25-year prison sentence after orchestrating an $11 billion accounting fraud scheme.
Honestly, there is, and I don't mean this to sound sort of the way it's going to sound, but there is like
Yeah.
a black kid who sold like a nanogram of marijuana who's got the same health problem, who's still sitting in jail, but Bernie Ebbers is out. Congratulations, world.
It's
You
like my
win.
analogy of Jack Dorsey going to Africa. If he was going to Paris, would anybody care? Is that the right analogy there?
There we go.
Yeah, I don't know. Speaking of OK billionaire, Elizabeth Warren has called Jamie Dimon and Business Roundtable's bluff over their pledge to redefine the purpose of a corporation to extend beyond the maximization of shareholder profits by saying, I agree, let's make it the law. Oops.
Nicely played. And not really in board members' minds, because the PwC report that I've been harping on all week that I love from October also found that the stakeholder-centered thinking for corporations, not a thing in boards.
Finally, and I have no segue here, the UK's top earning CEO bags a record $422 million payday. It's the CEO and founder of global gambling business Bet365, and holy shit, it's a woman.
Really?
Denise Coates. Meanwhile, the World Economic Forum said it will take another 99.5 years to achieve global gender equality, but it's not Denise Coates' fault. Damn it.
By the way, that World Economic Forum report, 100 years to
Yep.
gender parity,
Yep.
coming just outside of climate change. So congratulations, women.
Right.
You'll make as much as men
Oh,
after the whole world is underwater and on fire.
whew. Okay, I'm officially beat. So now it's time for Matt to make something.
Let's make something quick. Okay, so you mentioned Boeing, and you mentioned...
I mentioned a lot of things. Let's be
there was a
real.
lot going on in there,
Yeah,
but you mentioned
I did mention Boeing.
the Moody's notch and Dennis Muhlenberg still being CEO. So today I'm going to make a guess. And it's a very, very short guess. It'll take less than my 5-minute allotted time that you've set up in pre-production. I have been obsessed with this PwC report. It has so many cool things. I'm going to tweet at them.
Speaking
PwC,
of biz nuggets,
I just love this report.
Mm-hmm.
One last finding this week. We're going to end the year with this. 43% of directors say it's difficult to voice a dissenting view in the boardroom.
Oh, that's depressing.
So it's less than half, so that's good. But 43% is still a lot. That's a lot of people.
Jesus.
So a lot of board members actually have a problem saying no to anybody. Or yes, if that's the dissenting view, but I'm guessing not. Which brings us to Denny and his Mullen board at Boeing, okay? So Dennis has been the CEO of Boeing for 4 years.
Okay.
Boeing's board is a massive conglomerate of mostly white people, with the one exception.
Not a white? There is an exception?
There is one exception. There's one non-white person on the board. But it is a staggering 14-person board. So it's it's a pretty large board. It's not the largest board in the world, but it's pretty large. And I wanted to know why on earth they can't get rid of Dennis at this point.
Good question.
Why on earth can't we do this? Like,
I don't know.
And we've dissected this board about how chummy they are. There's a lot of cross-board references.
Yep.
They have a new board member. He's an admiral, but so he doesn't have a cross-board references. So that's good. They're making some progress. But this is a really chummy board. And so what I wanted to do is actually figure out maybe they can't do it because they've never fired a CEO before. Maybe they just don't know how.
Right. Okay.
Right. Very simple. False.
No, false. Okay.
In fact, only 4 of the 14 members have not fired a CEO before or been on a board where a CEO has transitioned before. And 5 of the 14. And of those, 4 of them are actually just retired generals or ambassadors. So they
never had a chance.
They've never actually had a chance to do that.
Okay.
So there's really only one person on the board who's been on other boards who hasn't fired a CEO. And that is, she is a CEO herself of Duke Energy.
Oh. Okay. Oh.
So not so much like, a possibility here. In fact, when you look at the numbers, and this is what I found, the vast majority of them have fired have been on the board with at least one CEO turning over. But 3 of them have been on boards where the CEOs have at least 2 boards where the CEOs turned over.
So they know how to pull the trigger is what you're saying.
They know how to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
But I think I found the problem.
Okay, let's do it.
It's a really simple, stupid problem.
Yeah.
They don't like to pull the trigger too soon. Dennis Muhlenberg has only been on the board for 4 years. The average tenure of the CEOs for the boards on which these people have sat is the lowest number is 6 years, but the average is in the 7.5-year range.
That seems pretty high compared to average CEO tenure.
That's right. So I think they're just waiting Dennis out till we hit about the 5-year mark, and then that is when we're going to start seeing rumblings that it's time to get rid of Dennis.
Can I say that seems like a great plan, Boeing board? Really.
It's only going to take another few hundred people to die before it's a real thing that Dennis gets fired.
Ugh.
I want to end Matt Makes
Yeah.
because I spent all week on this report, this PwC report. I mentioned it basically every day. I want to shout out to the PwC team who put this together.
Yeah, let's do it.
Paula Loop, Paul De Nicola, Leah Malone, and Sharad Jain. I love this report. I could read it over and over and over again. So thank you.
It's fun
PwC.
and depressing.
Thank you for PwC
It's a great mix.
for making my dystopic week possible.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Damion. We will be back. This was Business Pants. That's Damion Rollis. I'm Matt Moscardi. We will be back next week on Monday, and then we will be doing some short highlight clips from the past 2 months of Business Pants through the holidays, and we will see you again in 2020. But Monday, we're going to have a big 2020 sort of conversation, I think, right?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Thanks to our production team here, Courtney Rowe, Courtney Cook, music by Todd Hovanek, art and design by John Walsh, our advisor, Dan Rogachnig. We really want you to subscribe. We really want you to tweet at us. We really want your feedback. We really want a rating. Like, give us 5 stars, like now.
Yeah, why not?
Pretty please. And we'll be back at you next week with more businessy pants to put on.
Got that right.
Thanks,
Happy
Damion.
Hanukkah.